Before we jump into today's episode, I want to give a massive shout out to our amazing sponsor this season, Caroline from Huntington House Kitchen. Caroline is a multi-award winning business owner and baker and the life and soul behind her online membership, the Bake With Me Club. She helps people of all skill levels bake with confidence from the comfort of their own kitchen. She's passionate about making baking simple, fun and healthier, and her classes are hands-on, interactive and packed with tips and guidance. Right now, Caroline is sharing a fantastic free download with listeners called 5 Secrets to Make a Perfect Sponge Cake. It's full of her tried and tested simple tips so you can bake beautiful, delicious sponges every time without the stress. You can grab it at www.huntingtonhousekitchen.co.uk/5 secrets. I'll make sure to pop the link along with all the ways to find out more about Caroline and her Bake With Me Club in the show notes too. In the meantime though, let's get back to the episode that you're here for. Today, I am joined by the brilliant Rebecca Cracknell, identity and impact coach, and someone who is incredibly passionate about helping women build businesses that actually change their lives. We have a really honest and practical conversation about what it means to feel stuck in your business, why so many women don't even realise they're stuck in the first place, and how to start cutting through the noise of all the things you think you should be doing. We also dive into self-trust, identity, and the stories we tell ourselves, and how they shape everything from how we work to what we believe is possible for us. And we explore how your business can be used as a tool to create a life that actually feels good, not just one that looks good on paper. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, pulled in lots of different directions, or like you've got loads of ideas but no clear plan, this conversation will help you simplify things, refocus on what matters, and start taking action in a way that feels both aligned and doable. But before we dive in, if you are new here, hi, I am your host, Becky McAvoy. I am a multi-award winning social media marketer and the dreamer behind Be Heard Socials and the Boss Your Socials Club. I created this podcast to help women like you simplify your life and grow a business on your terms without the overwhelm. So if you're ready for some no BS advice, practical tips and honest chats that make social media and business feel lighter and more doable, then you are in exactly the right place. Whilst you're here, can I please ask a tiny favour? If you're enjoying the show, it would mean the world if you could follow the podcast and leave a quick review. It genuinely helps more women discover the show because the more engagement it has, the more the platforms recommend it to people who need this kind of support. It only takes a small moment, but it makes such a massive difference. Thank you so much. Now let's get started with this week's episode. Hey, Rebecca, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. And I am so excited to chat today because we are chatting about something that just lights my heart up, which is all about cutting through noise, cutting through the shoulds, and helping busy, overwhelmed women prioritize what they need to prioritize and get things done. So I love that. And I'm also very excited because a couple of months ago, I was on your podcast and I know what an incredible conversation we had and how much we kind of align with what we think. Excited to explore that even further today.
Absolutely. We did have a good chat and yeah, I don't have favourites, but it was one of my favourite chats.
Well, I will take that. I will take that. And I'll link to it in the show notes actually, so people can go and find your podcast and go and listen to the conversation if they want to. Because like I said, I really enjoyed it and I've had some nice comments about it. So yeah. But before we get stuck into chatting away, do you just want to share your story a little bit in terms of how your business came about, how you became a business owner, and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I am Rebecca Cracknell and I am an identity and impact coach. So essentially, I work with women who are creating businesses that will change their lives. And the reason why I do this is because my business has done that for me. I used to be a secondary school English teacher. It literally walked out of university and into the classroom. I hadn't even done like my teacher training when I started as a teacher. And then I basically taught in the same school for about 16 years, give or take. There were a couple of moments where I sort of did some other things too, but that was my story. So if we are talking comfort zones, I was very much in mine. And when I had children, and I have 3 children, I sort of incrementally left the profession. So I started off going down to part-time hours, and then my part-time hours were kind of spread across the week. And my school were incredibly accommodating, but the more and more I stepped back, the more and more I realized that it wasn't a lifestyle that I could sustain, because the part of me that was the very best teacher didn't feel that she could be the very best teacher whilst also raising 3 mini humans. And the part of me that was the very best mum didn't feel that she could be the very best mum whilst I was thinking about like the next mad lesson that I wanted to run. So it's kind of a story that lots of women share around that being the transformational moment where they decided, hold on a minute, something needs to look different. But because I'd lived in my comfort zone forever, didn't actually think I had any transferable skills whatsoever. And my husband was like, just tutor, it'd be really, really easy. Like everyone wants a tutor. My husband's a head teacher as well. And I was like, okay, I'll do a little bit of that, but I don't think that's what I want to do. And it's not fulfilling in the same way as like having your own class that you're taking through an exam process is. And the more I kind of experimented with that, tie it into like the context of COVID as well, the more I told myself the story that my career had peaked and I had nothing to give to the world, which was pretty sad moment, particularly when at the same time I was like, I'm an awesome mum and I'm doing a really good job of raising these humans and like helping them to fulfill their potential. So there was kind of like this sense of not knowing who I was anymore. And I was very lost in that story. And a couple of people kind of saw in me things that I couldn't see in myself. So I started in the first instance to create content for other people. And I used to write blogs for £15. And I was like, yeah, I'm a paid writer. This is fucking excellent. And being thrilled at the fact someone was giving me money to do something that I could do at home in my pajamas on the sofa, you know, like my kids were getting ready for the day or whatever else. And then over time, I kind of realized that whilst people wanted me to do lots of content for them and the content side of my business took off like pretty rapidly, that actually these stories around not having any skills were complete rubbish. And the teacher in me naturally found myself teaching, mentoring and coaching people through how to do their own content. And I invested in coaching in my work like pretty early on, thinking that I needed somebody to tell me about like the logistics of running a business. Like when I was writing my blogs for £15, I didn't have any contracts. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, I need someone to give me like the heads up on here's what you need to know. And pretty soon I realized that the key part of running a business was not all of that. It was the mindset stuff and the way in which you see yourself. And I went on quite a transformation off the back of that, where I realized that all those things that made me an incredible teacher were things that other people needed and wanted and used, more than maybe my ability to kind of like put a comma in the right place in somebody else's content. And that was when, yeah, like I kind of unlocked a whole new level of my business and started working with women to help them recognize and utilize their strengths in a way that allowed them to create lives that felt more fulfilling, more ambitious, like rich and ultimately satisfying and exciting.
I really, really love that. And I also like one of the first things I loved was that that you called yourself an identity and impact coach, because I don't think I've ever heard anyone call them like themselves that before. I just love the wording of it because it's so empowering and quite powerful.
I'm going to be honest, it's taken me a long time to land on that. I am the person who hated doing intros because I was like, well, what do I say that I do? And I kind of, through the coaching work that I've done with others, kind of landed on that idea of like, how many times would a man in a suit tell you about his like corporate job with some title that you like don't really understand what it means, and you don't actually care what the title is. You care about like, are they a person who can help me? Are they somebody who shares my values? Are they somebody who like gets the results that I'm looking to achieve. And I think that's the same like for women in business. We sometimes obsess over like our title because we're like, have I got the specific qualification that allows me to do that? Will other people think I'm wanky if I call myself that? And all these host of, again, other stories. And when I sort of boiled it down, I was like, what do I actually help people with? Because my day-to-day work can look so different. One day I can be helping somebody with it, like a spreadsheet around like their finances. And another day we're like deep in the mindset. And it came down to that. I help people make more of an impact with their work by stepping into the identity that feels true to who they really are.
Yeah, and that's just brilliant because like, you're right. It doesn't really matter what you're called, but that just really nails it. Like it says it really clearly and is broad enough that, it covers all the varying things you do, but equally not so broad that it's like, what does that even mean? When somebody says something really vague and it's like, okay, I don't really know what that means, but okay. So I love that. And I loved what you were saying about, and I know you're quite big on this actually, but like the stories you tell yourself about certain things, but also that actually sometimes the best thing that you can do is just take one step at a time and suss out your next step from there. You don't have to have your whole journey plotted out. I don't know if that's the way you ever sort of thought about it, because I think I did that, but I only realized that's what I did afterwards. But I think sometimes we can obsess over like what's the end goal, and actually sometimes you just have to take the steps forward and see what you learn from that and then go from there.
Yeah, I think particularly in the first instance, and with business, like we're told, like, what's your purpose? And people so often think of purpose as like the end result of like where you're headed and the thing that's pulling you forward. And I kind of flip that and I think of purpose as the way that we make sense of where we've been. Because every one of us has got a unique childhood, work experiences, like our relationships, all of that. And we're so often told, like, particularly with social media, right? Like your story is so powerful. Well, your story is the part that enables you to understand that purpose. And sometimes you do, and I was as guilty of it as anyone else, of like wanting to get there faster, of like, well, what is it that I do? And actually, like you say, sometimes it's taking one step at a time and figuring it out first as you go and making sense of the data that you learn from the things that don't feel right, or the moments where you go, oh yeah, like this all makes sense with that thing that I was doing like 6 years ago and I get it now. But I think it sort of unfolds and grows and expands as you do.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you saying about the purpose. So I have it with mine in the form of a personal mission statement, which I did with a coach a few years ago. And actually, nowhere in my personal mission statement do I mention social media or Instagram or anything like that. I'm talking about wanting to be happy more than I'm sad, to belly laugh often, about helping women live the life they want to live. And be the best mum to my kids. And there's bits in that about there. None of that is about social media. But every time I make a decision with my business, I go back to that. I think sometimes people can think their purpose has to be, tied directly into what they're doing. And actually it can be an overarching thing, can't it? And it's like, okay, a bit like you were saying, you want to help women make an impact, whether you do that through doing their content for them, or you do it through coaching them, or you do it through something else even possibly in the future. Like your purpose doesn't ever actually change. And so I really love that as well.
Yeah, and I think I would describe myself as like a multi-passionate. So I am somebody who likes to have lots of different things going on, and a lot of obviously traditional business advice is like find your niche and nail down your offers and all of this stuff that's about like setting stuff in stone. But as somebody who's like multi-passionate, I like follow the thing that excites me and feels fun. And I think that sense of your purpose being beyond your work enables you to look at decisions that you make in your business, not necessarily from just a business perspective, but from a, is this helping me fulfill like the reason I was put on this planet? And like, obviously there are decisions that are driven by money and finances and you're running a business, right? But decisions that you make in your business can also be linked to like, does that personally fulfill me? Does that help me make connections with people that like might become clients in the future, but also might become people who inspire me in other ways to do new things? And it allows you to kind of reframe the way that you look at what it is that you are creating. And sometimes, yeah, start a little side project over there that has nothing to do with like your core offer or whatever you want to call it.
I absolutely love that phrase, multi-passionate, and I think I might steal that. I love it. I really, really love it. So when you were talking about whether it's helping women get unstuck or find better alignment with what they want to do or what they want to follow, I think sometimes you can sort of know that you're stuck and feel like you're stuck. And sometimes you can be stuck without even realizing that you're stuck. Is there sort of signs that people can look out for or things that you notice in people's day to day where they need to get unstuck or they need to be more aligned with what they want to do?
Well, I think what you said about not actually noticing it is kind of key, because as women, particularly women of our generation, we were like raised under a like really specific set of conditioning rules that taught us what it meant to be a woman. And we were kind of simultaneously being told, like, you can have it all. You can have a career and you can have a family and you can be anything you want to be, whilst at the same time being told, oh no, not like that. And definitely not like that. And not like that. And so our sense of who we are can feel like normal to us. But when you start to look at it through the lens of growth and through the lens of alignment, you can go, well, actually, like, that's just a whole bunch of stories that I believed about who I had to be, and that isn't aligned. And so I think that so many of us are operating on that sense where we might not feel stuck, but we are limiting ourselves. And those limits, those kind of caps that we put on, whether it's like what money we can make in our business or what dreams we're allowed to pursue or how we're allowed to show up on social media, like they can feel very normal because you kind of look around and other people are capping themselves in similar ways too. And even though the kind of conversation is out there, it can feel like, well, that isn't me sometimes, because you don't feel necessarily bad. You have already got like a business and it's working and it's doing good things. And you've got a life that, yeah, it feels good. And I'm very grateful for all of the lovely things that I've got. But until you start to kind of analyze it through that lens of alignment and joy and fulfillment and satisfaction, it's only then that you can start to spot those places where you're kind of unconsciously capping yourself, and then start to unlearn some of those stories too. And I think this is one of the reasons why I talk about like your business being the tool to give you the life that you want. Because when you're creating a business, you're essentially building something that never existed before. And there are rules that we are given, and there's things that we'll go away and Google to try and find out how to do it, because all of us are starting from scratch. But just because X person over there is doing it that way, your thing that you are creating can literally be built the way that you want it to look. And I think, you know, a perfect example of this is how many of us kind of exist in that we wake up in the morning, we might do the school run if we're parents, and then our working day starts at about 9 o'clock. Like, well, that's just recreating that version of work that you had over there. But I know for me personally, like my favorite time to create content, for example, is on a Sunday morning. And other people will look at that and go, well, that's mental. It's a Sunday. You shouldn't be working on a Sunday. But for me, that's a day when I don't have like other commitments. I can sit in my pajamas on my sofa and I can just like write and let ideas pour from me without being pulled in a million other directions. And that wouldn't work for somebody else. But it's only because I've done that questioning of, well, what do I actually want this work to look and feel like, that I know and understand that for me, Sunday morning working is great. Whereas I don't tend to work on a Friday. Well, Mondays are a little bit like, sometimes I'll do a bit of work and other times I won't. And every single day I finish work at 2 p.m. And I think we get to shape our businesses in a way that should feel good for us. But like you say, that unconscious capping of what's possible for us doesn't always let us look at it in that way. And we can kind of get sucked into perpetuating those stories too, which can make it feel like you are stuck. Because I think one of the things that I often say to my clients is, you're not stuck. Like you might feel like you're stuck right now, but you're not. And the fastest way kind of through that is always action. It's just we're bombarded with so many things about what we should do that knowing what action to take can often feel really hard.
And isn't it funny as well, like we're bombarded with so much information about the action we should take, but like you said, so much of it is ingrained in us without even realizing that it's ingrained in us, because everything out there is framed around you work in the week, you don't work at weekends, and like, you know, if you're in a sort of 9 to 5 job or whatever, or even actually working the 9 to 5 is a big should, isn't it? Like actually you can do bits here, there and everywhere. And I've spent quite a lot of the last year trying to suss out what my ideal working pattern looks like. And I've come to realize that actually where I was like, I want to do 3 days, or no, I want to do 3.5 days, or no, I want to do this and work this day. And it's like, actually, mine changes every week depending on what I've got going on. And that's okay as well. Like, as long as you're
Yeah.
getting the work done, there's some weeks where I hardly work at all because I don't necessarily have to do the stuff. But I had this conversation with someone the other day where it was actually because I wasn't feeling very well, but I was like, I've got so much work I need to do. And then I looked at it and I was like, I don't actually need to do any of that. Like it would be helpful if I did some of that, but it's not going to be a problem if that waits until next week. And again, I think there's so much packed into that. It's like the ingrained shoulds and norms of society and all that kind of stuff, but also the added layer as women that we feel like we should always be doing, or we should always be working or giving to someone else. And yeah, you're right. It's such an individual thing that you have to decide it for yourself.
Yeah. And I think you have to kind of be brave enough to look at that, because a lot of that and that story around what it means to be a woman who is worthy in the world, it's uncomfortable when you face up to that, because it's been ingrained in us by people who are often people we love, people who are often like well-intentioned. It's come from every different angle. And when you start to face up to it, you also look at the ways in which you've played into that story as well. And those times when maybe like you've unconsciously played your part in reinforcing that for other women too. And that doesn't necessarily feel good. And I think it's maybe one of the reasons why so many people shy away from like doing the work as such, because like it's another version of stepping outside of your comfort zone. And yet, like, I know you talk a lot about boundaries in your work. And if we want to know our boundaries and be able to enforce our boundaries and recognize our worth and our value and have that reflected in our pricing, we have to have that sense of self-trust. And in order to build that muscle, it has to come back to you looking at everything you've been taught about who you have to be and questioning it, which is where like the identity work for me is really fundamental. Because if you're trying to create something that has never existed before from scratch, like, yeah, you're doing a really bold thing. You're stepping out there and you're doing something that's brave. And, you know, that is incredible, but it requires you to have such a deep understanding of yourself that when, you know, that little voice pops up in your head and is like, oh, you can't sit down today because it's like Wednesday at 2:00 and you haven't done this, and this. You have to be able to trust yourself enough to go, no, actually, I need to rest now, because if I don't feel rested, then I'm not able to show up and deliver my best quality work on Friday when I'm delivering to a client, for example. And you need to know that, because that should be then the thing that shapes how you create that thing that has never existed before. Because simply by following somebody else's blueprint, you're going to build somebody else's business. And ultimately, like, is that what you want? Is that going to leave you feeling successful, feeling fulfilled? Or is that going to leave you resenting everything that you have created?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I love all of that, because I just think everything you're saying is so true. And I think it's why conversations like this are so powerful. And I know you're a big believer of that as well. And it's a lot of the conversations you have over on your podcast, because it is really hard to do the work. You are creating brand new things. But equally, if we have these kind of conversations and more women hear it, it becomes a thing that people can do and people can see, and see that there's like an alternative to as well. One of the other things I was thinking as you were talking just then was, I think sometimes we can very much get stuck in our never ending to-do list that we just seem to have created because we need to have a to-do list. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I am a huge advocate of a to-do list because I love ticking it off. It's how I stay organized. It's how I organize my brain, all that kind of stuff. But I think sometimes we're like, no, I'll do that once I've got through my to-do list. And realistically, you're never going to get there. And I know that's some of what you help people unpack as well, is like, you know, actually what needs to be on that to-do list and what doesn't, and all that kind of stuff. Do you think there's stuff around the shoulds of that as well, of what we should be doing that again stops us from actually being able to even think about anything different, let alone actually try and do it?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, like our to-do list, it's like the laundry pile, right? Like even when you've washed it, you've then got to put it all away, and then you're wearing clothes and they need to go in the wash, and it all starts over again. So I think when you're building a business, first of all, normalizing the fact you are never going to get to the end of that list, because there will always be something else that will help you grow that business, whether that is like scale that business or, you know, whatever you want to do with it in the future, or just sustain it. There's still going to be work to do. I think normalizing that story for yourself is huge, first of all. I think the second thing is, without that self-knowledge, that self-trust, that recognition of what you actually want, getting sucked into the shoulds is going to happen. And so I think you have to ask yourself those tough questions about what you want your business to look like, first of all. So whether that's around like, well, actually, how much of my week do I want to work? What do I want that work to look like? So for example, like most of my client work is in Telegram, because I know that I not just don't want to, but would really struggle if I spent most of my time like on Zoom all week. Whereas I have a client and we were like adding up the number of hours within her offer of how much time she'd be spending on Zoom. And like, I was breaking out in a sweat thinking about it. And she's like, yeah, that's easy. I love that. And it's personal. And so without knowing all of that, those shoulds are going to come for you, because somebody else will always be telling you there's a way you should be doing it, and they'll be trying to sell you their way of doing it too. And so you have to have that inner trust and that self-knowledge, first of all. And then I think when you look at your to-do list, and this is something I do often with clients when they come to me and they've got that overwhelm, right? We all know that overwhelm. We all know what it looks like, what it feels like, and when it shows up. I look at like a D to-do list. I'm going to now make sure I get all of these Ds in the right order and do it correctly for you. But essentially, it starts off with set a timer for like 5 minutes and dump everything that is taking up space in your brain. So like your business stuff, your life stuff, your family stuff, whatever. Get it all out on a bit of paper, because once it's out of your head, like you're not trying to hold on to it as well. From there, I start off with, what can you ditch? What immediately do you cross off that list? Because that isn't part of your plan and your priorities. And again, this is why you knowing your path is so key. Get rid of it straight away. The second thing is what needs to be done, but doesn't need to be done today, so you can defer it. So that could be like, my website copy needs refreshing. Okay, that's great, but does that need to happen today? If not, it can go to one side on your second list, which is your defer list. From there, and this one is key, it's what can you delegate? Because again, as women, like how much stuff are we holding on to because it's like, oh, it would just be easier for me to do it. So whether it's you like with your team in your business and there is, you know, you've got that VA support, for example, but you are like, oh yeah, but I'll just do it because it's going to take me less time to do it because I won't have to message them or stick it on Trello or whatever else. Like, no, be realistic about the things that somebody else can hold for you, because that then allows you to operate in that like zone of genius where you are doing the one thing that only you can do. If it's life stuff, you know, buying that birthday present for your mother-in-law, for example, again, like, should that be coming to you? Think about it and be realistic about what you could delegate. And again, you might need to do some questioning of some stories around that, but recognizing it in the first instance, even if you're not actually able to do it yet, is going to allow you to set yourself up for that almost being like a micro goal in the future. And then what you're left with is what actually needs to be done, like right here, right now, today. And when you've got that clarity and that sense of actually, it doesn't all have to happen by 3 p.m. today, you can then focus on those things that do need to happen in the instant, like in the first instance. And then when you take the action, you feel greater clarity, you feel greater momentum, all of that stuff, and you can see how things start to move forward. But again, in order to be able to do that, you need to have that strong self-trust and self-knowledge and be honest about what is and what isn't part of your plan, and be prepared to face up to some of those places where you're maybe like leaking your energy by doing things or adding things to your list that actually have no business being yours.
Really love the comparison you gave at the beginning of that about the laundry, because I once heard the goal of the laundry isn't to have an empty laundry basket, it's that everybody's got clean underwear and clean clothes to wear. And so I quite like that, the way that you said about the laundry, because it's the same with your to-do list, isn't it? The goal of your to-do list, which as somebody who loves ticking things off, I'd love to get to the very bottom of it and have nothing on it. But realistically, you're always going to add stuff to it in the same way that you do with the laundry. So I think even that reframe of the goal of your to-do list isn't to clear your to-do list, it's to get the things done that you need to get done. And so I really love the 4D approach to it as well. And I love that you gave the sort of personal life examples as well, because I think that's a really big thing. And whether that's delegating to your husband or your partner or whoever, recently and it's because of the age of my children, but I started delegating some of it to the kids. You know, it's not just about your business, is it? It's like looking at everything that for you to be able to function. And the final thing I was just going to say on that one, I think has been a bit of a theme throughout all of this, but that I really love about what you're saying is that it's so individual and it is that real personal approach, isn't it? I've just loved what you've said around all of that throughout really this whole episode so far. And for me, I think if people listening could take one thing away from it, it is that it's like there is no right or wrong way of doing business or life or anything really. It's about doing it your way and doing it in a way that suits you.
Yeah, absolutely that. I think that, so I teach this idea of like your business is your tool to change your life. Now, that doesn't mean you are going to burn down your current life, leave your husband, abandon your children, run away to, I'm going to say Barcelona because that's what I'm craving right now, and like set up a whole different life over there. It means that you are going to know yourself better, recognize your worth and value, understand that you bring that to other people in ways that literally changes the world, and use that to make the small shifts in your own life that lead to better relationships, a better understanding of, I don't believe work-life balance, I believe in work-life integration, but like that sense of where your work is fulfilling and where your life is fulfilling. It's going to lead to that like celebration of yourself that so many women don't do enough of. That business changing your life is going to look different to every single one of us, but it is not necessarily, like I say, that abandoning of all the good stuff that you've already done and created. It's a better understanding of who you are so that you can live a life that literally feels so good to you, is like your very own personal flavor of satisfaction. And I think with that idea of like you were saying about getting your kids to do things as well, like I've spoken about the way we were conditioned through stories about what women had to be. But how many women building their businesses just perpetuate that story by telling themselves, I have to do it all. I literally have a client and she's like, well, I started my business because I wanted to be at home more to look after the kids, etc. I have literally done all of that. And all I've taught them is to rely on me. And now she's like 10 years or whatever into this iteration of her business. And now it's like, well, now it's my time, because actually I want to show them that, like, they might not be running their own business or whatever, but they need to like follow their own path. They need to understand themselves. And again, like what we model for other people, so whether that's our children or whether that's just the rest of society, by the way that we choose to build and live through our businesses, is really powerful as well. It's that questioning, it's that unlearning, it's that like bold, rebellious, I'm going to do it my way attitude that is going to change the world that we live in.
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, that is just all of that is just absolute fire. Like it lights my heart up talking about stuff like this. And I think it's recognizing as well that it isn't like it is, like you've said a couple of times, it's really hard to do it, but we sort of have to push through the discomfort and push through the challenges that you're likely to get from people, whether they're well-meaning or otherwise, because I don't think the world isn't used to women living like this and doing this kind of thing. So people will say, I've had somebody say to me in the last week or so, actually, with something that I've asked my husband to start doing with the kids, and it sort of be his responsibility. Someone said to me, but do you just think it would be better for me to do it? And I was like, do you know what? In some ways, I do think it would be better for me to do it, but I don't think he'll do it like badly or wrong. And I think sometimes we just have to accept, whether that's in business or personal life, like you said about delegating to a VA, they might not do it to the standard that we do it or the way that we want to do it. But if it gets done to the standard it needs to be done. And I think it's learning some of that as well, isn't it? Going, okay, it doesn't have to be how I do it if it means I'm not doing it.
Also, that there might be potential and possibility in that too, because actually they might go away and do it differently, and that might open up some whole new way of you thinking about how that operates. Like we don't have to be like someone who micromanages something just because we're seeking control.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like you said, like, yeah, it could be done better or it could not be done so well. But the only way we got good at doing stuff is by doing it over and over again and getting better at it. But I just think, I like thinking back to that conversation when that person said to me, do you not think like it would be better if that was you? Straight away, I was like, yeah, I do actually. And I felt really bad. And he wasn't resisting it at all. He is, I don't ever want to call him hands-on because I think that's offensive to him, to be honest. Like, he is a good dad and he does his stuff and he'll do whatever. Straight away, I was like, oh God, yeah, no, maybe. And then I was like, no, it's okay. Like, he's their dad and I can ask him to do this thing that I'm asking him to take responsibility for. So yeah, like I said, that's obviously personal life, but there's so much of that in business as well.
Completely. And I think recognizing sometimes that even though you're the business owner, like you're maybe not necessarily the expert at all things in your own business either.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Honestly, I love all of that so much. And you were saying earlier about, asking yourself difficult questions. Somebody's listening to this going, right, do you know what? Actually, I'm really empowered by this. I want to go away and really start to ask myself some of those difficult questions. What would be the key questions that you think someone should start by asking themselves to take the next step?
So I think the biggest question and the hardest question is, what is it that you actually want? Because I think women have been disempowered from sitting with their own desires. And we don't choose our desires. Like, we don't wake up one day and be like, oh, that is the thing I want. It is something from within us that drives us in some way. And like, we have been taught for a long time to suppress lots of our desires. So I think the first thing is getting comfortable with what it is that you actually want. There are a couple of activities that I use for this. Number one is I get every single one of my clients regularly to sit with and journal on their dream day. And if you're someone who like hates journaling, like, well, I'd argue get used to journaling, but at the same time, like, it doesn't need to be that you sit and write in your notebook. You could go for a walk and literally picture your dream day, but tap into all of your senses with that. Like, where do you wake up in the world, like, and suspend reality and dive into like all of the things that might be possible, because that doesn't mean, like I say, you need to go and leave your husband, abandon your kids and run off to Barcelona. It means that you can recognize, oh, do you know what, I'm really craving. So for example, mine always starts with me swimming. And I'm like, okay, I haven't got a pool in my house that I can wake up in and do that like 6 a.m. swim, but there is a leisure centre around the corner and I am a member of it and I do pay my monthly fees. Why am I not going swimming? Like, it's recognizing within all the things that are possible, what is it that you truly want? And thinking about your dream day, whether that is your dream day full stop or your dream working day, is going to allow you to see some of those bits that you're craving. And it might be that it's a touch of luxury. It might be that it's getting out of your own living room and going somewhere that is more inspirational. So go find a co-working space or like somewhere like a library or whatever that is going to allow you to be in a space that is different, opens up creativity. It could be that, do you know what, the one thing that you really want to do is to shut your laptop and read a book and feel creative again. But you're not going to know that unless you ask yourself that question. The second thing around your desires is to keep a list of all the things that you want, because women have been taught that the things that we desire are often shallow, superficial, and vacuous. And who says that is the case? But you resisting that thing that you desire is not going to enable you to feel good about what you're creating and what you're building and your sense of worth. So sit with those things that you want. I kind of, some people call it an I want list. I call it a mad dreams list. And when I first wrote my mad dreams list, like, those dreams were not mad at all. They were very normal, very achievable dreams that I had resisted for a very, very long time. And then when you've got them, like, you can introduce them into your day, or you can set them as like a goal that you're going to work towards. So for example, one of my first things I did when I did that was I took my daughter to Paris. I was like, I've wanted to take her to Paris since she was a baby. She's 12 years old. It's like an hour and a half on the Eurostar. Why have I not done that? But yeah, getting comfortable with what you desire, first of all, I think is really key. And then there's a piece around rewriting the story about who you are to have that, because all of us have been taught stories. And like I touched on there, it could be that like money is bad and you to want money is greedy. It could be stories about like you're not intelligent or funny or engaging. Well, that's going to show up like in your social media content every single step of the way, right? And I'd name that story. I'd recognize where you learnt that story and who that story actually serves. And I think this is a big step that lots of people overlook. I'd actually recognize where that story serves you, because staying in your comfort zone serves you in some way. And until you understand that stepping beyond that is going to feel uncomfortable, because you're going to lose something good in order to get something better, you're never actually going to do that. And then I think there is from there the piece about recognizing what won't change if you don't change that story. So where you will stay stuck. What will it look like in 6 months' time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, if you continue to stay stuck in that story? And then to literally rewrite it. And again, you might not be a fan of affirmations or whatever, but there is power in you writing down that belief that you choose over the one that you have believed for a really long time. And once you've got that new version of what you're choosing to believe, you're then in a position where you can identify actions that are going to give you the evidence of that too. Because that's all it means to rewrite your story. It's where can I find evidence of this new belief?
And it's just that knowledge is power type thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is once you know it, you've actually got something to work with. So a lot of the women that I work with very much relate to like a lot of what we've been speaking about, but also there's, I think, where they are very ambitious people, and actually when you let them throw out all their mad dreams, they'll almost have no difficulty getting out there if they give them the space to do it. Do you have any sort of thoughts or advice for those women that that might be listening to this who are really ambitious, who've suddenly got a load of mad dreams and might possibly be overwhelmed for an entirely different reason, what advice you'd give to those women?
I think this maybe almost goes full circle back to the purpose thing, because when you realize, like, I'm capable of anything, you're like, well, I could do this and I could do this and I could write the book and I could speak on the stage and I could do this, etc. Actually, I think tying them all together and almost going to the biggest version of what that dream is then going to allow you to focus on that and to use that as like a filter to filter out all of the other stuff. So it's almost the case of like, yeah, I could do anything. Well, don't look at the next thing. Look at the biggest thing, because the biggest thing is going to make the next thing happen just by one of like your focus and your direction on that biggest vision. Just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should. And so I think when you've got that ambition, when you recognize all of the things that you could possibly do, to bring them back and look at them through that lens of purpose and vision, that will allow you to then go, and again, coming back to like the idea of boundaries, like, no, that's something and it's great. And maybe it'll be there in the future, but right now, no, that's not tying into this. And no, I don't need to do that either. I often think of, like, there are two ways to make a sculpture, so to speak. I'm not a true artist. There's probably more than two ways. But one way is you kind of like build it up out of clay, for example, and you're making the thing by conscious choices about what you want to include in there. And another way is the chipping away, like of marble, to get rid of the bits that it's not. And I think sometimes when it comes to your business, like adopting that second version of like, no, it's not that and it's not that, allows you to get to that sense of the vision that you're creating a bit faster. So it comes back to like those boundaries around what you will and won't do, because does that feed into your big picture?
Oh, honestly, Rebecca, I love all of this so much. I want to ask one more question just before I've got a couple of questions I always end on. What is one thing, if you can choose one thing, that you'd give anyone listening today permission to stop doing that you think would make the biggest impact for them?
I think it's tough because that's really personal as well. Like, and what it comes down to is what you want and not doing the things that don't align with that. But I think saying yes when you mean no. And I think that incongruence between what your gut is telling you and what you say because you think you should, or you want to please somebody else, or you want to be seen as somebody else, like, your gut doesn't lie. And the more you can connect with that, not only does it enable you to do the things that you truly want to do, but it also helps to create that sense of you being seen the way that you want to be seen by others. Because anyone who is invested in you, like in a true connection, is going to respect that no a lot more than you saying yes just to please them. And that exercising of that boundary around no, that doesn't feel good for me, actually helps to position you as somebody who others respect in a way that is deeper than you can achieve by just doing what you should, not even what you should, what you think you should for others.
Really, really love that, because it's something I've really struggled with. And someone said to me a while ago, and it's something I've done for a long time now, is because my instant urge is to just go yes, without even thinking about it, without even giving it any time. So even if it's something that I want to say yes to, I try to say, I'll get back to you. That sounds great. I'll get back to you, because it gives me time to actually pause and think, do I want to say yes or do I want to say no? And the other thing that someone said that made a real impact on me was, if you struggle to say no, every yes you give is a no to something else. And that something else might be something that you really wanted to say yes to. So you're effectively already saying no by saying yes, because you only have so much capacity. So yeah, I think that's really, really powerful. Amazing. So last couple of questions I always ask people when they come on. What are things that help you show up in your business, and what tips would you give someone else to do the same?
So we all struggle with motivation, etc. from time to time when you work on your own, and depending on the way that your brain works too, I'm neurodivergent, I sometimes need that panic of last minute or whatever else. Is I always bring it back to the impact. And I'm going to share a really brief story of how I landed on this. When I was mum to very small children, those days they're dreary sometimes. They're boring. There's not a lot of fun at times. And it's very easy to feel like a shit mum. In those moments where I felt like that, the one thing that would always bring me back to feeling actually you're doing a great job, was to sit and read with my kids, because you can't feel like a shit mum when you're sitting and reading with your kids. So if you're having one of those days where showing up in your business feels really hard, think about the place where you make an impact first, because that's going to drown out all of those little stories of oh, nobody's watching you on Instagram anyway. Oh, no one's going to buy your offer. So what's the point in selling it? Those stories are going to show up in those moments when you feel unmotivated. But if you are in a voice note to your client, or you are doing that thing that only you can do, you can't feel like you're doing a shit job. And when you feel like you're doing a good job, it motivates you to do a better job too. So it always starts with, where do I know I can make an impact? And then I go do that.
I love that, because no one has ever said that. And that is so powerful, because it is it's giving yourself a little confidence boost, isn't it? Or giving yourself this little dose of joy. Amazing. So final question before asking where people can come find you. Is there any advice you'd go back and give yourself in the early days of running your business?
Well, first of all, I'd tell myself that £15 for a blog is not an appropriate price point. But the gratitude I felt in that moment for being paid to create was like nothing else. So I won't take it back. But I think it would come back to telling myself that I am more capable than I believe myself to be, because I think in that early point, because I had only ever existed in my comfort zone, I had never put myself to the test and challenged myself to see what I was capable of. And I am grateful for every challenge that I encounter in my business. The losing clients, the launch that completely flopped, the social media post that doesn't land the way that you thought it would. I'm grateful for every one of those challenges, because it shows me that I am more capable than I believe myself to be, because I've survived all of that and I'll survive the next thing. And it's all just data, right?
I really love that as well, because I think sometimes when I ask that question, and some people have actually answered it like this, actually, which I think is really interesting, is you can go back and give yourself loads of advice, like £15 for a blog is ridiculous. But equally, sometimes you only learn through doing, don't you? You only learn what you want to do or who you don't want to work with, for example, by working with that kind of person. Whereas the telling yourself you are more capable than you believe, everybody, literally everybody, can start their business by doing that. And like you said, whether that's through affirmations or whether it's through different things, I really love that. I think that's really nice.
Yeah. And I think again, it comes back to that chipping away, finding out what it's not, so that you can get clearer on what it is.
Thank you so much for your time. Honestly, I really appreciate it. Where can people come and find you? And if there's anything else you want to share at all, let this be your moment.
Thank you. So in the spirit of ditching the shoulds, you will not find me with a website, because that does not align with my shoulds. I am very much an Instagram girly, so let's hope it doesn't burn down tomorrow. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram. I am at Rebecca L. Cracknell. And then from there, I've got a few little gifts that you can grab to then join me over in my email list, which is where I do dedicate a lot of my time to.
Amazing. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for tuning in. I am honestly so grateful you choose to spend your time here. Before you go though, if you love this podcast and you're a woman running a small business who wants to make social media easier and business life less lonely, I have got something for you. The Boss Your Socials Club is here to bring you inspiration, accountability, confidence and community. It's a place where we ban the word should because we believe in bespoke advice that will work for you, your stage of life, and your business. You get a monthly content plan, ready-to-use templates, accountability and action sessions, a private members podcast, expert support, a brilliant community of women who get it, and so much more. It's like having a mini social media expert and a bunch of cheerleaders in your pocket so you can show up with confidence without the overwhelm. Membership starts at just £14 a month, and there is different tiers depending on the level of support you want. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time.